guys, my name is Janine and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about ball python care. I know there's a lot of these videos out there, but I just really enjoy watching them, so I thought I would make my own. A lot of this information is based on my experience. I've had my ball python for 2 years, and I can say he's thriving pretty well. He's like 34 pounds now, so I think he's okay. So I made a list of the things that you will need for a ball python on my phone. The magic chill pill. The first thing you will need is an enclosure, and your enclosure could either be a tank or a tub. That depends on you. I could get in depth with pros and cons of each, but for now we're going to stick with the basics. Now, no matter which enclosure you go with, you're going to want a heat source because snakes are ectothermic, so they rely on their environment to get heat. So you want to use something like a heat mat or a ceramic heat emitter, which I do have, so let me get that. So this is what a ceramic heat emitter bulb looks like. It only produces heat and not light. Ball pythons don't really care for light, so something that just produces heat to keep your ambient temperatures up is perfectly fine for them. You got a heat mat, and a ceramic heat emitter. I can talk about why I have foil on this thing later on. Whether or not you use a ceramic heat emitter with a ceramic lamp to go with it or an under tank heater, you want to regulate these heat sources. This is a Jumpstart thermostat. I have 3 of them, and then I have another off-brand one which works just as well. It's called an iPower. I got it on Amazon. It essentially works the same way, but these are super important. I cannot stress enough the importance of a thermostat and how people skip out on thermostats. Some people say that they just pile on the substrate on top of the heat mat. Substrate can be moved, and if your snake did happen to move that substrate, it would still be in direct contact with that 120 whatever hot heat temperature there is, and that would just cause burns for your snake. Personally, I'd rather take the safe route and regulate and monitor my under tank heater just to give me peace of mind, and at the same time, aside from thermostats, you also want a thermometer. This is one that I just use in my reptile closet to just keep track of the ambient temperatures in the whole closet. The whole closet is heated to about 77, 80 degrees. So, I mean, it's been out, so now it's 72 and 36% humidity as of the moment. I mostly rely on this for the humidity, which is super important for a ball python. This wasn't in his enclosure, but he does have one just like this. This is an Accurite thermometer and hygrometer combo thing. It's super common in the reptile world, so I'm sure you won't have a hard time looking for this. Next, you want a substrate that's really good at holding humidity. I personally use ReptiChip. I recently just switched to ReptiChip. I used to use Cypress Mulch or Forest Floor by Zoomed, which worked perfectly fine. I've just decided to switch to ReptiChip just because I like to try different products, and so far I really enjoy it. And ReptiChip, you need to like sponsor me because I love your product. It comes in a little brick, and then you dip it in water and it expands, and it makes a lot, and it's really worth your money. Next, you're gonna want some hides. I just have one like this. This is an Exoterra large hide. Now, Jumbi fits in this, but I don't put this in his enclosure. I put an extra large one because he's fat and he needs more space than this. I have a picture of him on my Instagram fitting on this thing, and it's quite a squeeze. His head was kind of like poking out because there's not enough space in here, but they do like tight spaces. But depending how big your ball python is, you could use one of these. You can make your own. You could use whatever, really, as long as it's dark and tight and secure, and they'll probably thank you for it. But yeah. Preferably one on the hot side and one on the cool side. You're probably going to want to get some feeding tongs. Ball pythons have really scary strikes. I don't know about you, but I love feeding my snake, and every time I feed him, he has a wonderful, oh my gosh, he has a great food response. So as soon as he smells the rat, he comes out, and if I didn't have this thing, my hand would be chewed up. Unless you're like a brave soul and want to hand feed your snake, I mean, go for it. But yeah, feeding tongs that are long enough. You could use forceps too. A lot of people use those, so yeah, really useful. One thing I also really recommend you guys get is a temp gun. It's super cheap off of Amazon. You can get a good temp gun for like $10, $12. Of course, mine's out of battery right now. These are super good to spot check your temperatures, so instead of having like multiple thermometers around your enclosure, you could use one of these, point it to wherever, and then it'll read the temperature. I wish this would work right now, but it doesn't have batteries, or the batteries just died.
I've had this for 2 years and the batteries just died.
You're gonna want some plants or other decor. They do like to be covered all the time, so when they're moving around their enclosure, they don't feel as exposed, so they'll feel like they're going under a bush.
Like a snake snack.
Another thing I do highly recommend is a scale. Now this is really small. I put like a shoebox and then zero it out and then put him in there, and then it'll tell me his weight. It's just super important, especially if you're asking people online for advice if your ball python's like underweight or things along that line. A lot of people will want to know how much your ball python weighs, and you can't know that if you didn't have a scale. It's super useful, honestly. I weigh all my animals regularly just to keep track of their health, if they're eating, especially during the winter months, because some ball pythons are notorious to go off of food during the winter, and if they're losing too much weight, then that's something you want to know. Luckily, Jumbi has never missed a meal with me. Well,
he missed one meal because he was unshed, and that was like the only meal he's missed in 2 years, which is pretty good for a ball python.
And last thing for this list is ReptiSafe. I used to not use ReptiSafe. This depends on what city you're in. I asked a lot of people on forums what water they use for their reptiles. A lot of them said tap water was okay and that they'd never have problems. Jumbi was on tap water for like a year, and then I got more reptiles and I needed ReptiSafe for one of them anyway, so I just got it. This is just for extra safety if you're concerned with what's in your water.
Which, honestly, we should all be concerned with what's in the water.
It goes a long way, so this is gonna last you a long time. So now that we have like the basic supplies down, we want to know how hot or cold to keep your ball python in. I'd say 75 to 80 is what you want for the cold side. I've had my cold side go like 82, and he was not having it. He was roaming and he didn't like it, so I found that he likes cooler temperatures. It really depends on your individual snake. They do have personalities. They're not just one snake fits all. So you do have to figure this out with your own individual snake. For my warm side, I keep it between 88 and 92. I set my thermostat to like 91, so it goes up like to 93, then it goes back down to like 88, so that's the range that I'm in. So just to recap, 75 to 80 on the cool side, 88 to 92 on the warm side, and you want your ambient temperature, like air temperature, like 77 to 80, 81, 82. Ball pythons do need a high humidity. Personally, I've found that if you raise their humidity to higher than 60%, their sheds will typically be good. Now this could be hard for you if you have a tank and you live in a climate that's really dry. If you're really struggling with humidity, then I would highly recommend tubs. They're super good at holding humidity. So around 55 to 65% usually for normal humidity, and then when they're in shed, I'd bump that up to like 65 to 80%, anywhere near there. Don't be afraid if the humidity goes up really high. Don't freak out. Don't be like me. I freaked out when I was like,
oh my god, the humidity's like at 80%, he's gonna die.
Nighttime temperatures could drop a couple of degrees, but nothing too drastic. You never want to cool your snake and then bring it back up to heat in the morning. Just have the under tank heater plugged in at all times, regulated by that thermostat. Now, a lot of the videos that I watch regarding ball python care guides don't address how to exactly put an under tank heater and a thermostat together and how to place it. This is what I personally do and what I have found has worked for me for 2 years. Let me get an example. So this is one of my heat mats that I'm not currently using. I put foil on the sticky part of the heat mat so that I could reuse it. So you're gonna hook this under tank heater into your thermostat, then your thermostat goes into the wall. Now your thermostat has a probe to keep track, of course, of the temperatures of your under tank heater. So we'll pretend that this is the thermostat probe. There are 2 ways I found that you could do this, depending on the size of your probe, because some people don't take account the size of the probe. If your probe is small enough, this would be heat mat, probe, bottom of the tub, and that's one way you could regulate it. That way you can track how hot this part of the heat mat is getting, which is what your animal is getting in contact with the tub, and you never,
I repeat,
never want to put a heat mat inside your animal's enclosure. What I personally do is, so this is heat mat, this is a tub, I put my probe right under here. Now a lot of people will be like,
well, that's not where the snake's touching.
But it really isn't that much different. I found it to be way more accurate down here than if I put it up here and sandwich it between the tub, because then you've created an air pocket right here, so it doesn't heat as evenly as I would like. This way, the heat mat is in contact fully with the tub, and I can still keep track of the temperatures and it regulates it just fine. That's just what works for me. Again, there are many ways to do this. Don't think what I say is how it should go, because I can tell you right now, hundreds of people will probably disagree with me on how I heat my tubs. Like I said, it's not black and white. Feeding. Ball pythons eat rodents, and if you're squeamish about rodents, then a ball python is probably not for you, but they do eat rats. Hatchlings typically eat rat pups off the bat. They'll typically eat between 5 to 7 days. Jumbi is now almost 2 years old. He eats every 2 weeks, so he doesn't need to grow as much, so he doesn't need the food as much because he's already almost there. Snakes in the wild, you gotta keep in mind, they don't run into prey that often, and you could easily overfeed your snake in captivity because there's just a ready supply of food, and they don't have that in the wild. You want to watch your snake. Keep track of your snake's weight. If you're confused on what prey size to get your snake, because I personally was confused, I will link a picture of a prey size chart below on mice and rats. I would recommend you start them on rats, because if you start them on mice, they get bigger than the biggest mouse size, if that makes sense.
At one point, I remember ordering like 50 mice, and Jumbi had to eat 5 mice to equal 1 rat. That makes sense.
If you're still confused on what size prey to feed your animals, and you're asking on forums or on YouTube videos and stuff, a general rule that I've learned is 10 to 15% of your snake's body weight, or the biggest part of your snake's girth, but you can't really judge that based on a picture. But yeah, the feeding chart that I could like put right here, this feeding chart right here, is based on weights of rats and mice feeders. So if you take like 10 to 15% of your snake's body weight, you could base what size prey your snake can eat or needs to eat based on this chart right here. So now the 10 to 15% rule only works with snakes, hatchlings to like juveniles, and maybe subadults. Once they reach adulthood, males shouldn't eat anything larger than a small rat, and then females shouldn't eat anything larger than a medium rat. Again, you can overfeed your snake and they can get fat. Personally, that's how I view it.
Just because your snake has gotten huge to where it can eat like a guinea pig doesn't mean you should feed it a guinea pig. Just because we're old now and have bigger appetites doesn't mean we should eat that much food. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
They'll grow either way. They don't need to grow as much as they used to. They just need to maintain that weight. Giving them bigger prey than what they need could be potentially hazardous. In my opinion, it's best to just keep that same size during every feeding to avoid just that extra weight.
Feed your snake however you want, but if it gets fat, it's gonna be your fault.
Handling. Okay, when you first get your snake, do not handle it. Don't overhandle your snake. Don't stress it. If you got it from a reptile show, don't stress it anymore. It's been exposed to people and lights and everything. If it was shipped to you, don't stress it anymore.
It was shipped in a box, like, for God's sake. Like, don't stress it anymore.
Leave it for like 5 days to like a week. Some people say like a couple weeks. Again, it depends on your individual snake. Jumbi adjusted to me in about like 4 days. He was completely fine. Then again, some snakes are more shy than others. Again, they have their own personalities. You gotta learn your snake's behavior, and it's all up to you to learn your snake's behavior. Don't miss out on it, because your snake will tell you if he's stressed or not. And the last thing I want to say is that check out ball python forums. Like, there's so many out there, and there's so many people with like years of experience that could tell you, you know, what they do and what they don't do. But don't take what they say and just say,
oh, this is what they said, therefore that's the only way to do it.
like, no, there are many ways to do it. Hello, I forgot to film an outro, so here I am in my bathroom like 2 days later. That's all for the video today. If you have anything else to say or to add, or if I missed something, feel free to correct me down there. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. Subscribe if you would like. Give me a like if you would like. If you don't, that's fine. I'm sorry for asking. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.